Okay, welcome to this Scratch tutorial. We are going to make a Halloween maze. I'm just going to kind of show you what it looks like to get started. The skeleton you control with the arrow keys on your keyboard. If you're on an iPad, I have a different version of this one that you might want to look at. And your job is to get the pumpkin and take it back to the beginning of the maze. You control the skeleton. If you touch either the walls or the ghost, it will send you back to the beginning of the maze. So if I decide to just run into that wall, there I am. And you see I can't move right now because the ghost is on me. So as soon as I start to move, I touch the ghost and I go back to the beginning. Okay, so this is the maze that we're going to make today. I have all the artwork ready for you, and that's in a link underneath this video. So it'll take you to a version of this on Scratch that doesn't have any code in it. It'll say Halloween Maze, no code. And you can just do a remix of that one. So you've got all the art in there already, and you're just having to worry about making the code. If you're on a different device than you're watching this on and it's not easy to click on that link, at least right now, if you search for Halloween Maze no code, then ours is the first one that shows up, and you want this one that's from the NASA IVV ERC. Okay, it's got the purple background. You can see the skeleton, the ghost, and the pumpkin. And so when you click on that, you'll have a green remix button. My computer won't have that because it's my project, but right here next to where it says see inside, when you get to this page, it should have a green remix code. Another way to get there is just to type in this URL, but you have to be careful to get all those numbers in the right order. Okay, so take a minute, pause if you need to, copy the program, and then join me when you're ready to start coding. Okay, so once you have done your remix, if you're still on the project page, you want to click the See Inside button, and that'll take you to this coding panel. Okay, and so you'll see that we've got a backdrop, which is our maze, and we have 4 sprites right now. We have Ghost, Skeleton, and both of these are pre-made Scratch sprites. Pumpkin and Bananas are ones that are from Scratch, but that I've modified a little bit, and I'll talk about that at the end. For now, what I want you to do is I want you to click on the skeleton. The first thing we're going to do is code how the skeleton is going to move. And you can tell you're on the skeleton code because you can kind of see this faint watermark ghost skeleton on here. Okay, so make sure you're on the skeleton, and that's what we're going to tell how to move. There's a lot of different ways in Scratch to tell something to move. The one that we're going to use today is going to be best for our how we want the skeleton to move. So it might be different than something you've seen before in Scratch. It's nice to have a lot of different ways to do the same thing because sometimes one works better and sometimes one works worse. So here we go. We're going to start by going down to Events. And then we're going to pull in this when the green flag is clicked button. Okay. Underneath this, we're going to go down to Control and we're going to pull in a forever loop. This means that whatever we put inside of this forever loop is going to run the whole time the program is running. So this is a really powerful loop. As soon as I click the start flag, you'll see that there's this yellow halo that appears around it. And this is going to be running the whole time our program is running. It's only going to stop having that yellow halo around it, showing that it's running when I click the stop button. I realized I forgot to make my mouse pointer big, so you get a little added bonus. If you're on a Mac, you can find out how to make your cursor big. You're going to go into accessibility. You don't have to do this. This is just me making it easy for you to see. And then in display, and then I'm going to make my cursor size large so it's a little bit easier to follow. Okay. So now what we're going to want to do is make an if-then loop. And what we're going to say is if I'm pressing the up key, then run what's inside of this block. And so you see when I pulled this if-then statement in, I sort of hovered it here and the forever loop got bigger. That's a mouth that can get as big as you want it to. It's going to keep expanding to accommodate any code that you have. And it's important that when you're nesting these loops, that you nest them in the right place, right? If I hover it over here, it's going to go outside the forever loop and that'll be inside of it. That's not what I want. I want my if-then loop to be inside of my forever loop. Okay. So what I want to know is I want to know if my user is pressing a key. And so I'm going to go down to this sort of turquoise sensing palette down here. and this hexagon shaped block says key space pressed. You'll notice that in between if and then there's this kind of hexagon shaped hole. This means that I can take this key space pressed and hover it over there, and you'll see that the hexagon shaped gap gets a little white halo around it. That means that if I let go, it'll drop into that place. And that's what we want to do. So get your key space pressed from that sensing menu and then drop it into place. All right. I don't want it to be the space key though. So you'll notice that this is kind of a bubble and there's a down arrow. That means that there's a menu here. And so if I click on it, I can say up arrow instead. All right. So I'm going to want to put two things in here now. I want the skeleton to move. And if it's the up arrow, I want the skeleton to move up. And I also want my skeleton to look like it's moving. And so I'm gonna put in a broadcast command that we'll get to in just a second that will let that illusion of motion happen. Okay, so move 10 steps is one way, but move 10 steps means in the direction that it's pointing. So if I wanted my skeleton to move up, I would have to turn it sideways and then have it move, and that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to keep scrolling on this blue motion palette until I get down here to these 4 blocks that say change X by 10, set X to, change Y by 10, set Y to. Okay, so Scratch uses the same coordinate plane that you might have seen in geometry class. So we've got our X-axis that's horizontal and our Y-axis that is vertical. So if I want to have my skeleton move up, which of these blocks would I want to use? Would I want to use an X block or a Y block? I would want to use a Y block. Y is going to make it go up. Be very careful when you're picking this block. This is a mistake that I make all the time. If you choose set Y2, your skeleton will just jump to that Y value no matter what. It's never going to do anything else. We want change Y by. And so I'm grabbing that change Y by block. It's hard to say. And dropping it inside this if the arrow key is pressed. Okay. I think that 10 is too far, so you'll notice if I click my start flag now, this is all active, and my skeleton moves really fast. I think that's too fast, so I'm going to change this to 3. You don't have to change it to 3. You can change it to whatever you want, but I recommend playing around with it a little bit and deciding what makes the most sense. Okay. So like I said, we want our skeleton to look like it's walking, and we're going to do that by changing its costume. So I'm going to want that to happen all of the time, anytime it's moving in any direction. So I'm going to save myself some work and save some blocks in my code, make it more efficient by using a broadcast command. And to do that, I'm going to go down to this yellow events panel, and that's where we got our when the green flag is clicked button. And I'm going to say broadcast message 1 is what I'm going to pull in, and that's down here. My computer's being a little funny. I apologize. We'll get it there. And I'm going to put it inside that if then, right under change Y by 10. Message 1 would be fine to use. There's nothing wrong with it, but I want to make it specific to my program so that it's easier for me to remember what that one's doing. And this is something that's going to happen when the skeleton's moving. So I'm just going to call it moving. You can type any name in there once you've chosen new message. It does not matter. It's entirely up to you. Moving is just the one that I'm going to do. And again, I get to there by clicking on this bubble with the down arrow and saying new message. Okay, so now let's have moving do something. I'm just going to drag my code over a little bit so I've got some room over here. I'm still going to keep it big so it's easier to see. And then right here where I grabbed broadcast message, I want to choose this hat block that says when I receive message. And in Scratch, these hat blocks, and that's what they call the blocks that have the curved top, that's what starts code. If I had this over here, this forever loop, and it wasn't attached to when the green flag is clicked, my skeleton would not be able to move. Okay, I have to have some kind of a hat block associated with it that says, okay, this is what's going to happen, then you'll start running everything underneath it. So when I receive message 1, I want to change the costume. And if I have my skeleton here, and you don't have to do this on yours, but if you look at it, there's 4 different costumes that Scratch has made to go with the skeleton. And if you move this between them, it's going to look like the skeleton's walking. So I'm going to go up to the purple looks panel. I'm going to choose this one down here in this kind of second group that says next costume. Okay, so I'm going to bring my skeleton back down to the beginning just because it's very high up there. And so I only have up so far. So now when I click the green flag, nothing is happening. I've made a mistake. Can you spot the mistake that I've made? Pause if you want to. Like, take a little bit more time to think about it because I'm just going to tell you. So I'm broadcasting moving, but this says when I receive message 1. I never changed my message. So this is an easy thing to fix. I just need to say moving. And now when I press the up key, you can see the skeleton is moving a lot. And I think it's moving too much. So I want to be able to see my costumes a little bit better instead of just looking like my skeleton's kind of jerking back and forth. So I'm going to go down to Control, which is this orange menu here. And Control has really powerful computer science commands. We've already pulled in some loops from here, but the one that we want now is this very first one that says wait 1 second. Now, 1 second is going to be, actually that doesn't look any different. What's up with that? Well, I learned something today, and it's that that doesn't really matter. Okay. You know what? We're going to let our skeleton do its thing, and I think it's going to work out. If not, we'll fix it later. So we're going to leave that like that. Our code's pretty simple. Okay. Our next problem is that our skeleton right now can only move up, and once I get to the top, there's really nothing else to do, right? I can't come back down. I can't move left or right. This is not going to be a very good maze. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the duplicate command so I don't have to pull in all 5 of these blocks, right? 4, I guess, if I'm counting right. So you'll notice on this if then is where I'm going to click, and I'm going to right click. If you're on a Mac, you can hold down the Control key, which is kind of in the bottom corner, and then click instead of doing a right click. And when I right click or Control click, I have this option to add comment, delete 4 blocks, or duplicate. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate. So now you see it made me a copy of just those 4 blocks. And I'm going to be really careful because it's really important to get it in just the right spot. I need it to be inside the forever loop, but I need it to be outside of that if then that's just above it. So I can't put it anywhere in here or it'll mess up my code. I need it to be outside of the if then, but inside the forever block. Okay, and if you don't get it in the right place on the first try, like maybe you put it like under here and it didn't attach to anything, you can always drag it around again. All right, so I have up. I would like to go down as well. I'm going to click on this one that's now just a duplicate and say down arrow pressed. Right now, if I press the down arrow, it's still going to make my skeleton move up. So what can we change here to make the skeleton move down? So positive numbers are moving us up. We want the opposite to happen, so we're going to use a negative number. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click in this change y by, and I'm going to put a minus sign in front of the 3. Okay. If you used a different number, sorry about that. If you used a different number instead of 3, that's fine. Just make sure that it's the same. Otherwise, your skeleton's going to be able to move up faster than they're able to move down, or slower. It's going to look different. So let's test our code. Our skeleton moves down. Our skeleton moves up. Excellent. Okay. If you think you know what to do to get your skeleton to move side to side, go ahead and pause and give it a try, and then I'll tell you how to get your skeleton to move side to side. Okay, if you're back, let's see if you're going to do the same thing as me. And if what you did worked, that's fantastic. It doesn't have to match mine. It just has to work for you. But here's how I would do it. I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to be on this if then, and I'm going to right click or control click and say duplicate. And underneath here, I'm just going to put that in again. It's outside of this if then statement that's just above it, but it's still inside the forever loop. I want to move left and right, so I'm going to choose right arrow. And I need to change this block, this change y by. If I right click on it, I can say delete block. That's one way to do it. I can also pull out and put the broadcast command back in. And then if I want to get rid of this block, I just drop it back over here on my palettes. So I'm going to go up to motion, and I'm going to go back to this section where we had change Y by and change X by. And this time I want change X by, okay? Again, be really careful not to grab set X2. Grab the one that says change X by. If your skeleton is not moving in one of the directions, double check that you've pulled in change X by or change Y by instead of set X2 or set Y2. Just to make sure my skeleton can move the same in all the directions, I'm going to change it to 3 so that we're doing the same thing. I notice my halo isn't active right now, so I'm going to go ahead and click the green flag to get it running. If you're trying to test your code and it's ever not working and you think it should, just try clicking the green flag to make sure that it's running your new commands. So now when I press over, I can move my skeleton to the right. Okay. Now that I have that, it's going to be super easy for me to make my moving to the left. I'm going to do the same thing here where I duplicate. Be really careful about where I drop it in so it's outside the if then, but inside the forever block. And this time, instead of right, I'm going to choose left. And what am I going to change in this change XY, or change X by, sorry, block? Yeah, I'm going to make it a -3, just like I made moving down a negative number. So I'm going to start my code. And my skeleton can now move in all 4 directions, which is pretty fantastic. I'm very happy with that. Okay, so that said, when I click the green flag, it's just going to start running wherever the skeleton is. And I want my skeleton to always start at the beginning of the maze. I don't want someone to have gotten to the pumpkin and then that's where the next person who plays my game starts. I want everyone to start in the same place. I want the skeleton to always begin at the beginning. So I'm going to move over here and I'm going to put in a new block. I'm going to get it so it's kind of close to this one up here. Okay. So I want to go down to events and I'm going to pull in this when the green flag is clicked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by setting my start condition. Okay, and my start condition is just going to be where the skeleton is at the beginning of the game. If you ever change anything that you want to make sure it changes back in Scratch, that's your start condition. And so that's something that you have to tell the program to do. So what I'm concerned about is where my skeleton is, and that is going to be found in the motion category. So I'm going to go up to the motion palette. And then right now, this information down here is telling me about that skeleton sprite. And I can see that its position currently is X is -208 and Y is -131. If you'll notice, this go to XY block here has those numbers pre-filled. That's a really nice thing that Scratch does for us. It allows you to sort of pre-program those in there. So I'm just going to pull this in. And now, no matter where my skeleton ends up, when I click my green flag, it snaps back to the beginning. Okay, so those are our start conditions. Let's just take a pause and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so far our skeleton can move around and does what it's supposed to and then goes back to the beginning at the end. But right now our skeleton can walk through the walls of our maze, and that's not really the point of a maze. So we need to put in some code that tells the skeleton what to do when the skeleton hits a wall. Now I'm sure there's a way that you can just keep the skeleton from going through the wall and stay where it's at, but I'm not exactly sure how to do that. So what I'm going to have my skeleton do is if it touches the boundaries in the maze, it's going to go back to its start position. Okay, so that's how we're going to try that. And to do that, we're going to use another forever loop and we're going to do a color sensing. Okay, so that's something we haven't done yet and it's really fun. It opens up a lot of different possibilities for you. So I'm going to go down to control and I'm going to pull in this forever loop here. and just put it underneath. I'm going to put it on the same block as my start conditions because my start conditions are really short. It's good to have your code broken up a little bit, kind of like you would use paragraphs in your writing, but I think this is a short enough start code that I'm just going to put my sensing for hitting the maze walls underneath it. So in my forever loop, I'm then going to put an if-then loop. Okay, and my if-then is going to be about if it's touching the maze walls, what should it do? So I'm going to go down to sensing, and I'm going to see the second block here that's hexagon shaped. It's called touching color, and that's the one that I'm going to drop in here. Okay, so right now the color it's set to is this kind of like light purple lavender sort of color, and that's not the color I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, and then you'll see I've got these sliders around where I can adjust the color, the saturation, and the brightness. So I could try to match my banana color, but that would be a lot of work, and I probably wouldn't get it right like the first 15 or so times. So if you notice at the very bottom, there's this picture that looks like an eyedropper and sort of on a picture. That's what I want to click, and that gives me the eyedropper tool. You'll notice that all of my Scratch window got grayed out except for my game. And so now when I go in here, anything I mouse over, you can see it has a ring around that kind of like magnifying glass, and that's showing me what color I'm picking. So if I wanted it to be pumpkin colored, I could go over to the pumpkin. If I wanted it to be ghost colored, I could go to the ghost. That's not what I want. I want the wall color. So you'll notice that there's black in the wall, and that's not the color that I want. I want to pick a nice spot right in the middle of this sort of greenish color, and that's what I'm going to click on. So I can see my ring around my magnifying glass is the same color as the center of that wall, and that's going to be what I click. So now I'm going to say if touching color, and then I want it to go back to the starting position. So if I right click or control click on here and say duplicate, it duplicates the whole thing, which is not what I want. So I'm just going to pull off that forever loop and put it back on the palette and then put this inside. So now when I start my game, I'm going to have my skeleton walk over here, go up here, and you'll see as soon as I touched that color, it sends me back to the beginning. Okay, which is going to be frustrating for our users if they're getting really far and then they just accidentally touch something. But that's the point, right? It wouldn't be a fun game if it wasn't also kind of frustrating and took you a little bit of effort to get through. Okay, so that's done. We will come back to the skeleton later, but what I want to do now is I want to get my ghost code going, right? Because so far my ghost is just kind of sitting in the center here. And that's not what I want for my ghost. I want my ghost to be moving around as like an enemy in the maze that can maybe run into the skeleton and send it back to the beginning as well. So I'm going to click on the ghost. All of my skeleton code still exists, but I can't see it anymore. If it makes you nervous, you can always check and see that it's still there in the skeleton. So the skeleton has the skeleton's code, but I can't see the skeleton code when I'm working with the ghost. I know I'm on the ghost because I see this little like ghost up here in the window. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some code that has the ghost move around the screen and just kind of randomly. So I'm going to go down to events and say when the green flag is clicked because I want the ghost to start moving as soon as the program starts. I'm going to make that nice and big. And then I'm going to go up to motion, and I have go to random position here. And that's not really what I want, right? So if I just put this code in, when clicked, go to random position, it just sends the ghost to a random spot, and it only happens when this green flag is clicked. So I'm going to put that back, and I'm going to go down to control, and I want it to happen forever, okay? So if I did put this go to random position in here, don't do this. You see the skeleton just kind of jumps all over the place. That's going to make my game really hard, and it's also not going to be very fun. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take out this random position block, and you'll see there's this one here that says glide 1 second to random position. That's the one that I want, the one that says glide 1 second to random position. So this is going to keep me from having to program like, okay, ghost, go here, then go here, then go here. it's just going to randomly, the whole time the game is running, because I've got it in this forever loop, glide to a random position on the board. So you'll see what this looks like. And frankly, I think my ghost is moving too fast. Like, even though my skeleton moves kind of fast, I'm not sure I can like outrun that ghost. And I don't have the code set right now to send it back to the beginning, so it's not hurting the skeleton. But anyway, my ghost is moving too fast. When we think about speed, it depends on two variables. It depends on distance it's going, and it depends on time. I can't directly adjust the distance that my ghost is going, but right here I can adjust the time. If I make this time bigger, my speed is going to get slower. So I'm going to change it to 7 seconds in mine. And so now my ghost is just kind of spookily floating around instead of zipping around back and forth. You can play around with that and choose a value that you like, a number that you like for that. The bigger this number is, the slower it's going to go. Sometimes its random positions will be really, really far apart from each other, and the more distance it's covering, the faster it's going to go. So if it's got 2 points that are really close together, it's going to take 7 seconds to go between them, and so that's going to be really slow. If it's got far away points, it's going to move faster because it's covering a bigger distance in that same 7 seconds. So that's just something to observe with your ghost behavior. I also think it would be fun to have our ghost be a little bit spookier. So I'm going to leave that code alone, and I'm going to start a new like paragraph of code by pulling in this when the green flag is clicked. And I'm going to set my start conditions for the ghost. I don't really care where in the maze the ghost begins, so I'm not going to worry about pulling in this go to XY. But I'm going to start playing around with what direction my ghost is facing. So I'm going to start by pulling point in direction 90. So what that means is that that's the default thing, the default number that they're set to. If you click on this direction wheel, or on this direction value, this wheel shows up, and so you can see I can make my ghost be upside down, I can make it be sideways. And so you can have this point around in any direction you like, but the default value that Scratch starts at is 90. So those sprites are always at a 90-degree angle to start with. So that's what I want my ghost to start at. You don't have to put that part in if you don't want to. If you don't care if your ghost starts out sideways, that's totally fine. But I kind of do. So I'm going to go down to control and I'm going to pull in another forever loop. I know we've used a lot of those, but it's because we have these processes we want running the whole time. So I'm going to grab my forever loop and bring it in here. And then I'm going to go back up to motion. And you see that there's this one that says turn. Yeah, this is the one I want. That says turn however many degrees. It doesn't matter which of these turn ones you pick. Okay, we're going to put in some code that makes it not matter. But basically, I want my ghost to just kind of like wiggle back and forth a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of setting this, so right now, if I ran this code, this is what it would look like. The ghost is just spinning around. If you like that for your ghost, keep it that way. Like, you can leave your ghost just spinning around like that. If you think it's spinning too fast, if you change this to a smaller number, it'll spin slower. If you think your ghost is spinning too slow, you can change it to a bigger number and the ghost will spin faster. It's entirely up to you. If you love it that way, go with that. But that's not how I want my ghost to look. So I'm going to go down to operators, and operators are where the math lives. This one here that says pick random 1 to 10, you'll notice it's kind of a bubble shape, just like this gap here is a bubble shape. That means that I can drag this in here, and you see how that white halo shows up around where it says 40? I can drop that in there, and so now it's going to pick a random value between 1 and 10 degrees. That's what that behavior looks like right now. That's not really the behavior I want my ghost to have. I want it to be just kind of going back and forth. And so I'm going to change my pick random from -2 to +2. So let's start again and see what that looks like. So that means that in general, and it's not always going to be this way, but in general, my ghost is going to be just moving back and forth. Eventually, it probably will get out of balance, right? It's not, because it's random, Like there are some times when it will be moving farther in one direction than it is in others, but I like that. I like that for my spooky ghost. Okay, so that's just a fun animation thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the gameplay. We do want to make it so that when our skeleton runs into the ghost, something happens though. Otherwise, what's the point of having the ghost there? It's just decorative. So now I'm going to leave my ghost code and I'm going to go back to my skeleton code. And just like we have this if touching color, then go back to the beginning, I'm going to right click on that and duplicate it. I'm going to make sure it's inside the forever loop, but outside of the if then. That's something that's, again, really easy to make a mistake on. So that's something you want to watch for. And inside that if then, instead of if touching color, I'm going to drop that back on my palettes to get rid of it. I'm going to go to the sensing menu. And this first one says touching mouse pointer. That's the one that I want to drop in here. I don't want it to say touching mouse pointer though. What I want it to say is if touching ghost. Okay, so now when I start my game, I'm going to go and try to get the ghost. Let's see how long it takes me to get there. I'm not positive that I touched the ghost and not the wall, and I really want to troubleshoot this. That time I'm positive I touched the ghost. As soon as I touch that ghost, it sends me back to the beginning. Okay, so mission accomplished. I've got the skeleton that can't go through walls, and I've got the ghost that sends the skeleton back to the beginning too. The next thing we're going to do is program what happens when you win. We're going to program how the pumpkin is going to play into this. So if you need a break, pause and take one, but I'm going to keep powering through. With the pumpkin, what I want it to do is I want it to travel with the skeleton once the skeleton gets to it. I want the skeleton to basically be able to pick up the pumpkin and take it with it back to the beginning of the maze, and then it'll give you some sort of a message that says you do a good job or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my events palette and pull in this when the green flag is clicked. I'm going to want my pumpkin to stay at the end of the maze, so these are going to be my start conditions. I want it to say go to X. Oh, see, now this is weird. This XY is not matching this XY here. So I don't know why Scratch does this sometimes, but I can always fix this. So right here, my X value for the pumpkin, and I know I'm on the pumpkin because I see the pumpkin here, I see the pumpkin highlighted here, it says pumpkin. So my X value should be 200, so I'm just going to type that in, and my Y value is 147. Okay, and just to double check, I'm going to click the green flag and nothing should happen to my pumpkin. Yep, that looks good. Okay, did that part. Now, we want to say if the skeleton has touched the pumpkin's going to follow the skeleton. That's going to be what we code next. So I'm going to go down to control and pull in a forever loop. Then I'm going to pull in an if then. And inside this if then, I'm going to say, okay, my if then is going to be if touching the skeleton. And then I'm going to tell it how to follow the skeleton if that's the case. So I'm going to go to sensing. And instead of touching mouse pointer, that's the one I'm going to bring in, but I don't want it to be touching mouse pointer. I want it to be touching skeleton. So if I'm touching my skeleton, I'm going to go up to motion and I'm going to say go to, and this one that says random position, I can change that to skeleton. So bring in that one that originally said random position, right? So that's what it looks like. And you can change that to skeleton. So now I'm going to press my green flag. I see the halo's active, and I'm going to try to get my skeleton up there to get that pumpkin. Okay, so now I see my skeleton, but it doesn't look like the skeleton is carrying the pumpkin. It looks like the pumpkin is somehow like attached to the skeleton's butt behind it, and that's not what I want. So what I'm going to do is set a new start condition, and this is going to be in the looks palette. Right now, the pumpkin is behind the skeleton. I want the pumpkin to always be in front of the skeleton. So down here in the looks menu, which is purple, there should be one that says go to front layer, and that's the one that I want. And I'm just going to put that up here with the start conditions. And so now when I start the game again, And the ghost is in my way, so it might take a second. Bear with me. I think I can dodge him. Oh, I can. Okay, so now it looks like the pumpkin's at least in front of the skeleton, even if the skeleton's arms aren't really involved in touching the pumpkin. So now my skeleton can carry my pumpkin around. Fun thing that happens if I run into the ghost or the wall, the pumpkin stays wherever I left it. So it's almost like programming in a save point for your players so they don't have to go all the way back to the beginning. You can program it so they have to go all the way back to where the pumpkin was up in the top corner, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to take some pity on my players and try to make it better. Okay. So we've got our skeleton moving around. We've got it so it can't go through the ghost or the walls. We've got it picking up the pumpkin. The last thing I want to do is say, okay, I want to give my players a message that lets them know when they've won, that lets them know when they've completed what I wanted them to do. And I'm going to do that with the pumpkin. I'm going to put in code that says, okay, pumpkin, when you're in this spot, when you're in this area, and this area is just going to be that bottom corner, when you're in that area, tell the players they've done a good job. That's going to be my next bit of code for my pumpkin. We're almost there. There's one more thing we're going to do after that. So we're getting close to having a finished game. If you like how the game is now, you don't have to finish the game the way that I'm finishing it. You can be happy with your code. That's one of the best things about coding. You don't have to make it exactly the same way I make it. You make it the way that makes you happy. Okay. So if it makes you happy to have your pumpkin tell the people good job when they finish your game, we're going to pull another if-then statement inside of this forever loop. Okay? And inside here, we're going to put in a couple different blocks. It's going to get a little bit tricky, so bear with me. We're going to construct the thing that's going to go in there. It's going to be this and statement, but we're going to build it down here just because it's a little bit easier to see. We want two things to be true for this if-then statement. We want the pumpkin to be below a certain y value, and we want it to be to the left of a certain x value. So those are the two conditions we're going to put in. And to do that, we're going to use these comparisons. And so both of them are going to be less thans. So in the center here, it says bubble less than 50. I'm going to put one of those in either side of this and. And so just like that hexagon shaped gap up there, if you hover it, will let you drop in text. The same thing happens here, okay? But I don't really care about bubble 50. What I'm going to do is I'm going to care about my X and Y position. So I'm going to go up to motion, and I'm going to scroll down until I find these blocks that are X and Y position that are kind of rounded. And them being kind of rounded means that I can just hover over that bubble until it gets that white halo and drop it in. Okay, this is why we're building it outside of there, because it can get a little bit weird. If something happens and you put it in the wrong spot, you can always pull it back out and try again. If you somehow get it stuck behind something else, it doesn't let you do that too much, but you can always pop it back in. So this part, you have to be really careful and make sure that it looks right. So right now this is saying if my X position is less than 50 and my Y position is less than 50, and remember I'm going to put this in here, then run the code that's underneath. But those aren't the values that I want. I want the X value to be less than, and I don't need them to necessarily be there, but let's say less than negative 200. And the Y position to be less than, let's say negative 125. And I typed an equal sign instead of a negative sign. That's another way that you could break your code and have it not work. Just be careful. So double check. Do I have X position less than, and remember that's this kind of shape of an alligator, right? 200, and Y position less than negative 125. Make sure that that looks good. And you can test it to see if it works or not, but it'll help if you have it that way to get it started. Then I'm going to go up to looks and have the pumpkin say something. So instead of saying hello, I'm going to say you won with a bunch of exclamation points. All right, that's it. Time to run our game. Let's see. Oh, that's just heartbreaking. Can I outrun the ghost? I think I can. Okay. Oof. If you think that your skeleton is outrunning the ghost too frequently, you can make that amount of time that the ghost glides for shorter, or you can do the thing I'm going to show you after we put some music in our game. So there, it works. It says you won. The last thing I'm going to do for my game is I'm going to go back to the ghost code. It doesn't matter where you put this chunk of code. It can be anywhere you like. But the ghost doesn't have a lot of stuff going on. It's pretty simple. And so this is just a visually easier place for me to put this. It doesn't have any meaning to put it on the ghost code. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a soundtrack, right? Games tend to be more fun when you have music with them, when you have a little bit of ambiance, right? So I'm going to go down to events like we always start, and I'm going to pull in when the space bar is clicked, or when the, sorry, not the space bar, when the green flag is clicked, because I want my music to be playing the whole game. And so if I want my music to be playing the whole game, what's the next block I'm going to put in? That's right. I'm going to put in another forever block. Okay. So then inside your forever block, you're going to put a sound. And right now, I guess I already have one picked out. If you copied this one, there's cave, garden, and mystery. I don't think you're going to be able to hear them if I play them on my computer, but these are ones that I liked, that I thought were good background noise for this. Mystery, I think, is the spookiest. So if you don't want your maze to be too scary, you might want to go with garden. That one's a little bit, I think it's still nice. And I think that's the one I'm going to go with today. I'm not gonna make it too bad. So the block that I'm going to pull in is going to be play sound until done. If you pull in start sound, it's not going to go the way that you want it to go. So you want to play sound until done. And you can choose any of those tracks that you want. If you don't like any of those tracks, just click back to the sounds menu, right? You've got these three up here: code, costumes, and sounds. And down here at the bottom, you can choose a sound, you can record your own sound, you can get a random sound, or you can upload a sound from your computer. So to choose one of their sounds that they come up with in Scratch, I would recommend using loops, because loops are a little bit longer, and so they're going to have more of the kind of background music sort of thing that you want. Some of the sounds in All are just like a single note on a different instrument. So that would just be all your background music would be just one note again and again and again. You can do that if you want to. Like, it's entirely up to you. But I recommend loops if you want something that feels a little bit more like background music. And if you mouse over this little thing, it'll play that sound for you. So you can get a preview of it before you decide it's something you want in your program. Okay, I'm not in the right place anymore. So to get back, I'm going to click back. To get back, I'm going to click code. And that's the sound that will play when my game plays. All right, I want to talk a little bit about how I made the art for this. The ghost and the skeleton, I just used the Scratch library. But pumpkin is not something that exists in the Scratch library. However, if you go to the costumes panel, you see this is called Apple. Scratch does have a sprite called an apple, and I just took the apple and I colored it differently to make it look like a pumpkin. So I'm going to put the apple back in there. Oh, there's a lot of things in there taking a while to load. So you can see the difference between the two. It's weird. Okay, I guess you can't see the difference between the two. There we are. So apple here, I've colored to look like a pumpkin, and I did that just by using this paint bucket tool, the fill tool. I'm going to turn this apple purple because why not? This little white spot here is to make it shiny, right? So if I want my purple apple to be shiny, absolutely, I can do that. And then I can also use this paintbrush tool to put things on it. So I painted some stripes on mine to make it look like, you know, how pumpkins have those kind of lines on them. That's what I did. But for this one, how about I make it some sort of like space fruit, and we'll just put spots on it. So you can do whatever you want with these, with the existing sprites in Scratch, and you can do a lot of cool things. Like I wanted a sort of spooky looking wall. You'll notice that this is called bananas. I took the bananas from Scratch and I just sort of turned them upside down and then got rid of the bottom of them and put a wiggly line in there. And that's what I used to make my backdrop. If you don't like the backdrop that I made, you can change the maze. So I'm going to click on backdrops over here. And instead of having paint tool or any of these things selected, I'm going to click on the cursor, like the pointer thing. And that means I can just move them around. So you can put extra walls in, you can take walls out, you can totally rearrange this maze. If you move the background, that's not going to be quite as fun, but that's something that you can do. And if you end up not liking it, this undo button here will just step it back and you can walk back through all the things that you did and get back to the original if you are happy with it. If you're worried about that, and you don't want to mess up the original and have to go backwards, you can always right click on the backdrop and say duplicate, and then you have one to play around with and you can always go back to the original as well. I hope that if you do make a different maze that you'll share it with me and show me what you did. Okay, if you don't like how fast your skeleton is moving, I'm not 100%, I haven't tested this out yet, but I think I know what to do. So inside each of these if key pressed things, I think we need to put in a wait block if we want our skeleton to move a little bit slower. I'm going to have it go back just so the weird pumpkin isn't in the way. And I'm also actually going to go to the ghost and disconnect the music because it's going to bother me while I'm coding. I love it when I'm playing games. I don't love it when I'm testing my stuff. So I'm going to go to control, and wait 1 second is going to be way too long. I do not want to have to wait 1 second every time the up key is pressed to move. So I'm going to change this to like 0.3 and see what that looks like just on the up. So that's still fast. Oh, that's way too slow. 0.3 is even really, really slow. So let's change this to 0.1 and see how I like that. Still fast there because I haven't changed anything except up. Oh, that's still really slow. So I'm going to cut that time in half. I'm going to change it to 0.05. Well, let's go, skeleton. 0.05 is not bad. I think that's a reasonable amount. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this to the side. I'm going to right click on it and say duplicate. And then I'm just going to add it in. Whoa, just kidding. I'm just going to add it into each of these here. And so that's going to slow my skeleton down just a little bit. Enough that I can see the costume changes and it doesn't feel like I'm going too fast. I really like that. I'm very happy with that. Okay. I hope that you have enjoyed this. Add us on Scratch as a studio that you follow. We're NASA_IVV_ERC, and I would love to see all the fun Halloween mazes that you came up with. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. I am going to make another video that's for if you have an iPad. Even if you don't have an iPad, if you want people to be able to play your game on iPad, it might be nice to watch that and add in those bits of code that make the iPad one work so that it doesn't matter whether your players are on a computer or on an iPad, they can still play your game. Thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoyed this Halloween maze.